Welcome back to ABA Chapter Chat. We're so glad you're joining us for another exploration into essential topics. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something truly foundational and often incredibly complex: supporting communication in the early years. Our mission for this deep dive is, well, to really unpack Chapter 3, supporting communication in the early years, from our source material. We'll explore practical theories, specific methods, and the crucial role of early intervention. We'll try to keep it clear, insightful, and, most importantly, highly applicable to your work. Think of it as your shortcut to being well-informed on this critical area.
Yeah, and what's great here is how this chapter immediately grounds us in a real-world scenario. It's one many of you might recognize. It introduces Lori, a preschool educator in a Head Start program. She's grappling with 4-year-old Evan, who isn't making eye contact, doesn't respond to traditional methods, and, his parents believe he's just being a boy. This situation just perfectly illustrates the complexities, right? And the questions you grapple with daily. Is this a developmental delay, or will he grow out of it? What can I, as an educator, try before making a referral?
Absolutely. Those are the big questions, aren't they? And we'll be addressing exactly those points as we journey through the material today. Communication is so much more than just talking. It's like the bedrock for a child's entire development, social interactions, academic success, all of it. That's why early detection and support are just so incredibly vital. Okay, so before we jump into the how-to for children like Evan, it's really crucial we understand the underlying why. Like, how do different perspectives even view language development? The chapter highlights a few key theories, and honestly, they can sometimes feel contradictory.
It's such an important starting point because our philosophical orientation, it truly guides our approach. The chapter outlines the nativist, constructivist, and behaviorist perspectives. So the nativist approach, maybe most famously associated with Noam Chomsky's universal grammar, proposes that language development is basically a biological predisposition. It's innate, universal. This view suggests that with even a minimal language environment, language will just naturally unfold.
That idea of little impact for intervention, though, that sounds pretty stark. What's one of the biggest challenges this nativist view poses for educators when they encounter a child who's struggling?
Well, the nativist view can unfortunately sort of tie the hands of educators, right?
Yeah.
If language is seen as purely innate, then a child's difficulties might get chalked up to an organic abnormality, implying there's little that teaching or intervention can actually do to alter that path. And for us, in the world of intervention, that's a significant roadblock. Then we shift to the non-nativist or constructivist approach. You've got figures like Piaget and Vygotsky here. This view sees language developing through interaction, with a lot of reliance on adult support. Language and cognition are interactive. The child actively constructs their own development, especially through social and emotional experiences. Now, this perspective, it offers a more hopeful prognosis for kids at risk, but a common critique is that it provides little concrete guidance for really changing a child's language trajectory. The teacher is seen more as a facilitator.
Okay, so the nativists suggest intervention might not do much, and the constructivists lean towards facilitation rather than direct instruction. So this brings us to the third approach, which, for those of us rooted in applied behavior analysis, really reframes how we think about language, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That's the behaviorist approach, most profoundly articulated by B.F. Skinner in his work Verbal Behavior. Skinner described language not just by its form, but by its function or purpose, how it's mediated by a listener. He introduced the concept of verbal operants to categorize these different functions. This shifts our focus from what words a child knows to how a child uses those words to get their needs met. It's a game changer.
The verbal operants. Yeah, foundational for us, but for those maybe newer to Skinner's work, it can sometimes feel a bit abstract. Can you give us a really clear, day-in-the-life example that illustrates how understanding these helps us pinpoint where to intervene?
Of course. Skinner emphasized that language is acquired through a learning process. Modeling, instruction, reinforcement, consequences.
Yeah.
It's a very direct instructional approach. So the core verbal operants are mands. Think of a child saying cookie because they want a cookie. The word functions as a request, asking for something that isn't right there. They're manding for it.
Okay, manding for it. Got it.
Tacts. This is labeling. If a child points to a ball and says ball, they're tacting. They're commenting on something they see, hear, touch, whatever.
Right.
Echoics. Simply imitations. An adult says, "Oh no, you fell down," and the child repeats, "fell down." They're echoing what they heard. And intraverbals. This is a response to what someone else says, but it's not imitation. If an adult asks, "What would you like to drink?" and the child responds, "Juice," That's an intraverbal. It's a verbal response to another verbal stimulus, like answering a question or filling in a blank.
So the real insight here isn't just knowing these terms, right? It's understanding that a child might be able to echo cookie, that's an echoic, but not actually ask for one, which is demand. That distinction immediately tells us not just what language skill might be missing, but which function of language needs direct teaching. That makes our interventions incredibly precise.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the behaviorist orientation means we recognize that all behavior, including spoken language, serves a function. And that past behavior, the learning history, determines future behavior. This leaves the door wide open for learning to take place at any time. It's a clear deviation from perspectives that suggest fixed time windows for development. This framework gives us concrete strategies for intervention, especially with children experiencing developmental delays. It's incredibly empowering for ABA professionals.
Okay, so understanding the theories gives us a framework. But how do we know when a child like Evan might actually need support? The chapter clearly divides language into receptive and expressive forms, and then adds those crucial social nuances.
Right, so receptive language is all about understanding what someone else communicates, comprehending spoken words, gestures, signs, whatever that means. It's often thought to precede expressive language. For instance, think about a baby reacting to loud sounds, or smiling at familiar voices by 3 months. That's receptive. Or a toddler following simple commands like, come here, or pointing to pictures in a book when you name them by, say, age 1 or 2. Caregivers often naturally model speech in that slowed-down, higher-pitched tone with exaggerated intonation, or they use prompting, like asking, would you like a drink out of a cup? If so, say cup, please. That's supporting receptive understanding, too.
Got it. And then expressive language is the flip side, actually producing those words and sounds yourself to communicate with someone else. What does that look like typically as a child grows?
Well, in the very early weeks, babies make those throaty vowel sounds, cooing. By around 6 months, they start combining consonants and vowels, babbling like ba-ba-ba or da-da. The first actual word typically appears in the second half of the first year. Then you get 2-word phrases around age 1, like more juice. By age 2, they're often asking questions and using expanded vocabulary, sometimes called telegraphic speech, like daddy go car. And by age 4, their speech should be pretty fluent and understandable, certainly to adults who know them well.
But communication isn't just about the words themselves, is it? It's also about those social nuances, the kind of unspoken rules that make interaction effective. These seem so vital.
Oh, absolutely crucial. You're hitting on a key point. These include things like cultural rules about personal space, the back and forth rhythm of conversation, making eye contact with the speaker, listening with intent, knowing how to appropriately switch topics. And a really key social nuance, now considered an early sign of delay and super important for early intervention, is difficulty with joint attention.
Joint attention. Okay, can you define that for us? It sounds like such a foundational skill for pretty much all social learning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Joint attention is basically the ability to shift attention between another person and an object or event. It often involves things like shifting your eye gaze and gesturing, like pointing. So imagine a child points at a big bug on the wall and they immediately looks back at their parent, checking to see their reaction. They are jointly attending to the bug with their parent. It's about sharing that focus. It's a pivotal skill. It really aids social and language development significantly, and its absence is a clear flag for needing early intervention.
Wow. Yeah, and this all circles back to Evan, doesn't it? His parents, believing he was just being a boy, suggest they might not have recognized these more subtle signs of a potential delay. That parental reluctance must be a pretty common challenge for ABA professionals out there.
It absolutely is. Parental reluctance, sometimes denial, it's a significant hurdle we often face. The chapter stresses that early intervention, EI, is the universal first line of defense for children with identifiable risk factors. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, what many of you just know as IDEA, actually mandates EI services for children from birth to 2 years old who show delays in communication, social, emotional, or adaptive skills.
Birth to 2.
Yeah, birth to 2. And when we talk about early intensive behavioral interventions, or EI-BI, early really means before age 5, ideally before 4 or as young as possible. Intensive means many individualized hours of treatment per week. And behavioral refers to using ABA principles, understanding the behavior, including language, is learned and influenced by its environment. And intervention, well, that just means treatment.
So despite any parental hopes, just waiting it out, hoping they'll grow out of it, that's really not the best plan.
Definitely not, no. The wait and hope approach can unfortunately lead to more significant and persistent delays down the road. I remember one family I worked with, they initially dismissed concerns about their child's very limited vocalizations, but once they saw the power of specific play-based strategies, how quickly he started responding, their engagement just skyrocketed. Educating parents, helping them understand, it reduces fear and reluctance. And their involvement is so well documented as being crucial for success. Early identification is prioritized because with proper EI, those differences between children needing services and those not needing them can often be minimized by the time they reach elementary school.
Okay, so if we suspect a delay and we understand the urgency, what's next? The chapter emphasizes ruling out medical and health issues first, which makes sense. Once those are addressed, it's all about assessment, right?
Indeed. Assessment is defined as the process of gathering information specifically to make decisions that inform intervention. It's critical for a whole range of purposes. Screening to identify potential concerns, determining eligibility for services, individualized planning, like for an IFSP or IEP, monitoring progress throughout intervention, and ultimately measuring the child's outcomes.
And this is where the ABA professional plays such a crucial role, not just in implementing intervention, but in understanding and advocating for the assessment process itself.
Absolutely. Educators, therapists, we must be an active part of the assessment process. And we need to be able to inform parents accurately about the need for screening and the real benefits of early intervention. The American Academy of Pediatrics, for example, recommends developmental screenings at 9, 18, and 24 or 30 months with ongoing surveillance at every well-child appointment. But this raises an important challenge. Racial disparities in screening and early intervention referrals still exist, particularly in historically marginalized communities and for families with low income. ABA professionals really can and should be advocates for equitable access to screeners and well-child visits for all students.
That's a really important point. So what kind of assessments are we talking about here? What tools are available to help identify these delays and maybe provide that initial roadmap?
Well, assessments often begin with informal screeners or checklists. These are typically completed by parents, caregivers, and teachers. Some common tools include the Ages and Stages Questionnaire, 3rd edition, ASQ3. This is a highly reliable, culturally sensitive developmental and social-emotional screening tool. It covers kids from 1 month up to 5.5 years. And it's great because it really integrates parent knowledge about their own child right into the assessment.
Okay.
There's also the Early Language Milestone Scale-2, ELM Scale-2. This is for birth to 36 months. It assesses language abilities through a mix of parent reports, observation, and some direct testing. And the Language Development Survey, LDS. This is specifically a vocabulary checklist for 2-year-olds. Generally, having fewer than 50 words at that age might indicate a language delay.
Right, okay. And then there are the more behaviorally based assessments, which for many of our listeners are likely the most familiar and actionable tools.
Yes, exactly. These are particularly relevant for our field, and they often serve as both assessment and curriculum guides. So, for a child like Evan, these tools wouldn't just tell Lori if there's a delay, but they'd give her specific guidance on what to teach next. 2 big ones are the Verbal Behavior Milestones and Placement Program, VB-MAPP. This is a criterion-referenced assessment, a tracking system, and a curriculum guide, all based on Skinner's analysis of verbal behavior. It's generally appropriate for children up to about 4 years old whose language skills aren't typical, often used with kids diagnosed with developmental delays or autism. It covers milestones, barriers to learning, transition skills, and directly helps guide IEP goals.
Super practical.
Very. And the other one is the Assessment of Basic Learning and Language Skills Revised, ABLLS-R. This is another really comprehensive tool focusing on language and early learner skills. It assesses something like 544 skills across 25 different areas. It helps identify the skills needed for success when they get to kindergarten.
So these tools are not just for diagnosis, but crucially for guiding intervention. They really provide a precise roadmap for what to teach, how to teach it, and how to measure progress along the way.
Precisely. Both VB-MAPP and ABLLS-R are incredibly beneficial for early childhood educators, precisely because they function as both assessments and curriculum guides. You can often use them with everyday classroom materials. They directly inform IFSP and IEP goal writing. And now there are digital tools available for streamlined data collection too, which makes the whole process much more efficient.
Okay, fantastic. So now that we've identified the need, we've assessed the child using these great tools, what evidence-based interventions and strategies can we actually use? This is where we shift from understanding to action, right? Turning those assessments into real-world change for these kids.
Exactly. This is where we bridge theory to practical application, directly drawing on those behavioral principles we talked about. The chapter details several key strategies. One big one is the picture exchange communication system. Now, this was originally developed for children with autism or developmental disabilities, but it's profoundly useful for any child needing communication assistance. It teaches nonvocal children to communicate using pictures. PECS guides a child through a very structured, multi-phase process. It starts with simple picture exchanges for highly desired items, then teaches discrimination between pictures, then expands to putting pictures together for phrases and sentences like, "I want purple crayon." And eventually, it fosters more complex conversational skills like responding to "what do you want?" or making comments. It's a clear, progressive path designed to build functional communication from the ground up.
That sounds like a really clear step-by-step process. Very systematic. And what about teaching that crucial skill of joint attention we discussed earlier? How do we specifically target that?
Yeah, teaching joint attention is also pretty straightforward and relies heavily on basic prompting and reinforcement. First, you identify really preferred items or activities to kind of bait the environment and heighten the child's interest. Then you pair appropriate responses, like them looking where you're looking or pointing and looking back at you, with access to these highly preferred items. That's the contingent reinforcement. Initially, you might need to exaggerate your own interest in the item, make it really exciting, until the child demonstrates successful responding. Then you systematically fade those prompts and the level of reinforcement over time to promote more natural social interaction. It's all about making that shared focus intrinsically rewarding.
Got it. Making it fun and rewarding. And the chapter also mentions enhanced milieu teaching, or EMT, which sounds like it integrates several techniques into a more maybe naturalistic approach.
It does, yeah. Enhanced milieu teaching, EMT, is described as an eclectic, naturalistic, early language intervention, but it's very much grounded in behavior analysis. It uses a child's own interests and initiations to prompt and teach language during everyday activities and routines so it feels more natural. EMT involves a few key components. Environmental arrangements. This has a big approach, meaning preferred activities and materials are available to promote engagement, and a little approach, which involves specific strategies to encourage the child to ask for items, like putting things just out of reach. There's responsive interaction. Here, the implementer really follows the child's lead, promotes turn-taking, models appropriate language related to what the child is interested in, and provides positive feedback. And finally, specific milieu teaching procedures. These include things like eliciting modeling, say ball, modeling ask commands, "You want juice?" say "juice, please." Programming specific time delays after you model something to give the child a chance to respond, and using incidental teaching procedures that pop up naturally throughout the day.
Okay, so lots of hands-on, very direct application strategies there. But what about technology? I mean, it's everywhere now, and the chapter does highlight its growing role in supporting communication.
You're absolutely right. Virtual technology and other tech has become indispensable in many ways. So assistive technology, AT, is the broad term. It includes basically any item, piece of equipment, or system that's used to increase, maintain, or improve a child's functional capabilities. Under that umbrella, we have augmentative and alternative communication, AAC. These are essentially all forms of communication other than typical oral speech. And AAC exists on a spectrum, right, from gestures or sign language, which we might call no-tech, to things like picture schedules or simple button switches, which are low-tech, all the way up to sophisticated electronic devices, which are high-tech.
So things like apps on an iPad or a dedicated communication device, those would fall under high-tech AAC, giving children voices they might not otherwise have.
Precisely, yeah. High-tech AAC often involves voice output communication aids, VOCA. These devices actually speak out loud for the child. They range from specialized apps for standard tablets like iPads. You mentioned apps like Proloquo 2 Go, which is amazing. It has like 14,000 customizable icons, or Acorn, an app that actually learns to predict what a child might want to say based on context and past use, all the way to dedicated electronic devices built specifically for communication, like Dynavox systems or GoTalk devices. And we're even seeing wearables and AI starting to enter this space, both as teaching components and as part of treatment packages. Imagine the possibilities for a child like Evan if he could clearly communicate his needs and wants through a device like that.
That sounds incredibly powerful, really life-changing for some kids, offering so many possibilities. But it also sounds like potentially a lot to consider before just jumping in with a device. It can't be a one-size-fits-all solution, surely.
Oh, absolutely not. It definitely isn't. Before starting any AAC or even AI-driven program, an individualized AT assessment is absolutely crucial. This assessment has to be learner-focused. It needs to consider the student's specific skills, their desired communication outcomes, the environments they'll be using it in, and the available resources, including input from parents and the school team. The primary focus must always remain on the student's ability to thrive. How does this technology actually help them achieve their goals? Can they use it effectively in different settings? We need to think about generalizability. We also need to be mindful of avoiding screen dependence and ensuring the technology actually increases positive social interactions and academic gains, not hinders them. It's about finding the right tool for the right child at the right time, not just getting the latest gadget.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive has really shown us just how multifaceted supporting communication in the early years truly is. From understanding those foundational theories to implementing evidence-based strategies like PECS or EMT and leveraging technology thoughtfully, it's just so clear that early, intensive, and individualized intervention rooted in behavioral principles really makes all the difference.
And let's not forget the crucial role of the ABA professional in all of this. You, our listeners, are the guides, the advocates, the implementers on the front lines. You face those challenges like parental reluctance. You work to ensure equitable access to screening and services, and you navigate the complexities of thoughtfully integrating technology. Your understanding of typical development, your ability to conduct thorough assessments, and your skill in applying these interventions, these are paramount to helping children succeed.
Yeah, ultimately what this all means for you, our listener, is that supporting communication is about so much more than just teaching words, isn't it? It's about empowering children to express their wants, their needs, their ideas. It's about fostering their social connections, building relationships, and it's about laying a really strong foundation for all future learning. It's truly about giving every child a voice.
Absolutely. And as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, maybe consider this. In a world where communication itself is becoming increasingly dynamic and varied, how might our role as ABA professionals need to evolve? How can we not just meet children where they are, but proactively shape environments that anticipate and embrace all forms of functional communication for every child? What stands out to you right now as the most impactful takeaway from today's discussion for your own practice tomorrow?
That's a great thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into supporting communication in the early years. We really hope this conversation has given you valuable insights and some practical takeaways for the incredibly important work that you do. Until next time, keep diving deep.